I'm Michelle Mikes, the K-12 Mathematics Supervisor for the Cobb County School District. Our district is committed to helping students succeed, and you as parents are an integral part of this process. To help keep you informed about what your child is learning in our math classrooms, we are excited to provide you with these informational videos on concepts taught throughout the school year. Thank you for taking the time to discover ways to support your students' learning.
Welcome to the 3rd grade Unit 5 Geometry video. My name is Jamie Carberry. Here is a concept map that we will use to refer to the different topics of instruction in this unit. In this video, students will learn to classify shapes by their attributes, draw a shape that belongs or doesn't belong to a group, divide shapes into equal parts, and write each part as a fraction. We're going to start by looking at how 3rd graders classify shapes by their attributes. 3rd grade students will describe, analyze, and compare properties of two-dimensional shapes. They compare and classify shapes by their sides and angles, and connect these with the definitions of shapes. In 2nd grade, students learned to identify and draw triangles, quadrilaterals, pentagons, and hexagons. 3rd graders build on this experience and focus on investigating quadrilaterals. Students learn that a quadrilateral must be a closed figure with 4 straight sides and begin to notice characteristics of the angles and the relationship between opposite sides. Here are some of the quadrilaterals that students in 3rd grade learn about. They learn about the sides, the angles, and they learn about how they can categorize these quadrilaterals into different groups. The first quadrilateral that we're going to discuss is the parallelogram. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral that has 2 opposite sides that are parallel. And you can see here that we have different representations of parallelograms. The next quadrilateral is a rectangle. A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. Next we have a square, and a square is a quadrilateral that has 4 equal sides, and it has 4 right angles, angles that are 90 degrees. We have a rhombus over here, and a rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 equal sides, but not all of the angles have to be 90 degrees. The last quadrilateral is a trapezoid, and a trapezoid is a quadrilateral that has at least 1 pair of parallel sides. Here's an example of a task that a 3rd grade student may be asked to complete in the classroom. The first part asks them to draw 4 different examples of quadrilaterals. As you can see, I drew a square, a rectangle, a trapezoid, and then I drew a different type of quadrilateral. And down here it says, what are the defining attributes of a quadrilateral? Here students need to write an explanation of what a quadrilateral is. And my response is, a quadrilateral is a closed figure with 4 sides and 4 angles. 3rd graders also need to sort geometric figures and recognize squares, rectangles, rhombuses, trapezoids, and parallelograms as quadrilaterals. Here we have a Venn diagram where students need to look at the shapes at the top of the page and sort them into 2 different categories that they choose. They get to determine the 2 categories and label the Venn diagram. Then they place each quadrilateral into the correct category on the Venn diagram. Shapes can be left out of the Venn diagram if they don't belong in either category. You can see at the bottom I selected parallelogram and rectangle. Just to remind you that a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with 2 opposite sides that are parallel. A rectangle is actually a parallelogram, but a rectangle has 4 right angles. So let's get sorting. We're going to start with shape A, and shape A has 2 opposite sides that are parallel. so it is a parallelogram, but it also has 4 right angles. It's also a rectangle. So we're going to place letter A in the middle section of our Venn diagram since it fits into both categories. Next, let's look at letter B. Letter B is a square. A square is also a special type of rectangle because it has 4 right angles, and it also has 2 opposite sides that are parallel. So it's a parallelogram and a rectangle. So it also goes in the middle of our Venn diagram. Letter C is another rectangle. And since we place letter A in the middle, we know that rectangles and parallelograms share attributes, so letter C goes in the middle. Letter D does not have 4 right angles. It is not a rectangle. Letter D does have opposite sides that are parallel, so letter D is a parallelogram only, so we're going to place it in the parallelogram circle. Letter E also does not have 4 right angles. It is not a rectangle, but it does have 2 opposite sides that are parallel, so it is a parallelogram. Letter F is a parallelogram because it has 2 opposite sides that are parallel, but it does not have 4 right angles, so it is not a rectangle. So we're going to place it in the parallelogram circle. Letter G is a trapezoid, and letter G has only 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel. Since it only has 1 pair, it is not a parallelogram, and it does not have any right angles. Letter G does not fit in either category, so we're going to leave it on the outside of our Venn diagram. Letter H has 2 right angles at the very top, but since it does not have 4 right angles, we're not going to place it in our rectangle category. It is not a rectangle. Letter H only has 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel, so it is also not a parallelogram. We're going to leave letter H outside of the Venn diagram. It does not fit in either category. Students get plenty of practice sorting and determining the different categories that the quadrilaterals go into in their 3rd grade classroom. Now we're going to talk about how students need to divide shapes into equal parts. In grade 2, students partitioned rectangles and circles into 2, 3, or 4 equal shares. They described the shares using words such as halves, thirds, half of, a third of, etc. And then they described the whole as 2 halves, 3 thirds, or 4 fourths. In 3rd grade, students add partitioning into sixths and eighths. Here I have an example of 1 whole square. It's not partitioned yet. If I want to take this 1 whole and divide it into 8 equal pieces, I would be dividing it into eighths. So students in 3rd grade may get manipulatives such as fraction bars and fraction strips, kind of like what I have here, and they would practice partitioning shapes into equal pieces. They learn to describe each part as a fraction, and since I am dividing this whole into eighths, each 1 piece is divided and described as 1/8. So you can see here that I've taken my whole and I've partitioned it into 8 equal shares. Each share is described as 1/8 of the whole. As students learn how to divide shapes into equal pieces, they start experimenting with making different representations of fractions. So here you can see I have area representations of 1/4. Each of these squares represents 1 whole, and they are partitioned or divided into 1/4 pieces, and they're done differently. So you can see in each representation, the square is the whole. The 2 squares on the left so these two squares here, are divided into 4 parts that have the same size and shape. So that means each of these 1/4 pieces are the same size and they're the same shape. Each of these 1/4 pieces are the same size and the same shape. So that means they have the same area. They take up the same amount of space on the inside. In the 3 squares on the right, so these 3 squares, the shaded area is 1/4 of the whole area, even though it is not as easily seen as the part in the division of the squares into 4 parts of the same shape. So you can see here that even though this is not broken up into 4ths, you can see that these 2 pieces that are shaded do represent 1/4 of the whole square. Same thing here. Even though this is broken into 1/8, these 2 shaded pieces still represent 1/4 of the whole square. Same thing with the last square. Students gain experiences practicing, shading, and representing 1/4 differently. Looking back at Unit 5, students spend time classifying quadrilaterals by their sides and angles, and they group quadrilaterals together by similar attributes. Students also spend time dividing shapes into fractional pieces, and they write each part as a fraction.
Thank you for your time. We know that when families and schools work together, student success increases. Please visit the Cobb County Math Department website for additional information and resources to support your student at home.